Ouais, on peut commencer.
Okay, good.
Welcome, everyone. I will be slowly letting folks in, so we'll just take a couple of minutes to allow folks to slowly trickle in. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning, Pat. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, everyone else. We're just giving a couple more minutes to our colleagues to kind of trickle in. In the meantime, feel free to grab some coffee, some water before we'll start. We'll start by 11:05. Yeah, welcome. I'll give it about a minute or two more, and then we can get started. Welcome again. Thank you for joining us. We're just giving a couple of more minutes for some of our other colleagues to join the session today. As we wait, I invite you all, we have one more minute, but to just quickly grab a cup of coffee, cup of water. We are in here for the next hour and a half. So grab anything that you need to be comfortable, and we'll get started very, very shortly. Okay. Okay. All right. We are almost at 11:05, so I will get started. Welcome back, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this joint conference presented by the ARC Hub and by the Digna program. It is day 2. We hope you found the sessions from day 1 engaging. Before we launch really into the meat of our session today, I would like to take some time to go through some housekeeping very quickly. I know we went through a bit yesterday as well. As always, we will be having, we do have simultaneous interpretation. And so if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll be able to choose which language you would like to hear the session in. I will be testing it now, and so I will be doing the rest of our housekeeping in French. So do take the time to switch to the English channel if that is what you are more comfortable with. Donc, bienvenue tout le monde. Comme je disais, notre session se déroulera en anglais, mais nous avons l'interprétation simultanée en français pour la session. Donc, veuillez prendre un moment pour trouver le bouton d'interprétation en bas de votre fenêtre de Zoom. Je vous invite aussi à ajouter vos pronoms à votre nom si vous êtes confortable. À tout moment, si vous souhaitez poser une question, veuillez cliquer sur le bouton lever la main et nous nous assurerons de vous passer le micro. Sinon, vous pouvez toujours mettre vos questions dans le chat. Et aussi, pour notre session aujourd'hui, nous allons utiliser Mentimeter. Donc, vous aurez plusieurs occasions pour faire des interventions à partir de Mentimeter. Et le chat box, ici, la boîte de dialogue, sera utilisée aussi pour partager des documents. Donc, prêtez attention à ça. Et à tout moment dans la session, vous pouvez contacter Mark Edwards, qui est notre Tech Commander, et si vous avez des problèmes techniques. Comme pour nos sessions hier aussi, nous allons incorporer une prise de notes collective et donc nous vous invitons tous à contribuer. Vous pouvez ouvrir le fichier Google Doc qui va être partagé dans le chat et n'hésitez pas vraiment à participer de la manière qui vous convient mieux. Et donc, avant de rentrer dans notre session, je veux aussi prendre le temps un peu de remercier l'équipe qui nous aide aujourd'hui. Il y a un grand merci à l'équipe de Corporation Canada, donc à Megan, à Leila, à Barbara, Shannon et Marc pour leur soutien. Et bien sûr aussi un grand merci à nos invités qui vont parler plus tard et aux interprètes sans qui nous ne pourrons pas vous offrir cette expérience optimale. Donc, merci à tout le monde. So before we get started, I do want to take a moment and start off with a land acknowledgement to acknowledge and honor the people and the treaty agreements and unceded lands of Turtle Island. I come to Canada as a settler immigrant. I live, gather, work, organize, and play on the traditional territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, and that's also the traditional territory of the Mohawk people. I acknowledge that settler relationships to both the land and the people of this land have been broken and sometimes misused. As we are talk about the topics of anti-racism today, and in this particular session, PSEAH, contextualization, localization, or even just working with local communities, we recognize the way in which our presence on this land upholds colonialism. We recognize the way in which our presence can reproduce dispossession and violence for Indigenous folks. For those of us who are settlers, I encourage all of us to commit to working and learning more about how we can prioritize upholding the conditions of the treaties that govern this land. I recognize that full liberation is not possible without Indigenous freedom and liberation, and I acknowledge the land and Indigenous folks and elders who have been here since time immemorial, and given this in my particular identity as a settler immigrant, it's really trying to understand how I benefit from this land in a separate manner than regular Canadians, but also at the intersections of me being a Black Muslim woman and finding solidarity with Indigenous folks and thinking about the ways of unlearning I personally need to know, and the biases I may have known and unknown, and committing to working on those and committing to finding ways to connect to Indigenous communities in the places that I work and live. I do live normally in Toronto, which is the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee. And so I also acknowledge my relationship to that land that I live in. I would encourage all of you to take some time and reflect about your relationship to this land. Do feel free to put into the chat where you're joining us from today. And with that, thank you and welcome to our session. So we'll go first over a quick agenda of our session. We'll start with some ground setting. So we'll just go over what supports we have in our community agreements for our conversations today. We will have a presentation by the RSH Hub. We will then have an open dialogue space before we close the session. The first thing is I want to say is that we do have psychosocial support available. We understand that, of course, the conversations that we are having today can be quite sensitive. It can be quite triggering due to the sensitive nature of our work. We do encourage you to participate to the extent that you feel comfortable. So if you need to take a break from the sessions or step back from your screen at any point, please do. We do have psychosocial support free of charge. It's confidential and directly done through Mobuntu Counseling. They are specialists in sexual violence and they have experiences with intercultural and trauma-informed approaches. Our staff is also identified by the prefix staff. So just in case you need to reach out to any one of us, please feel free to reach out to the folks that have staff before their names. Before we get into our conversation, I want to take a moment again to go over our community agreements. I will read them quickly. The first is that we're trusting you to do what you need to do to ensure your full participation and that you will communicate your needs as they change. Second, we are committed to building a safer space, prioritizing confidentiality, equitable participation, honesty, ownership over our words and actions. We are coming here open-minded, intended to be respectful and accountable. We will call out harmful behavior. 4, we are committed to being respectful, candid, transparent, and fair to all participants, regardless of language, race, national or ethnic origin, age, sex, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, ability, etc., through the conference. 5, we are committing to creating a space for all in attendance to contribute and participate, to give prominence to the voices and stories of those who might otherwise be excluded, and to seek out the wisdom and reflection of those who may feel silenced. 6, we are committing to encouraging a forum in which the varied experiences of participants are given equal weight. 7, we are committing to participating in the forum with the spirit of openness to learning and a recognition that the broad diversity of participants includes experience and knowledge that is beyond my own and beyond our own, and through which we can all grow. 8, we are committing to ensuring the physical, emotional, sexual, and spiritual safety of all the participants in this conference and session, including by calling out harassment when it is witnessed and reporting incidents to conference organizers as appropriate. 8, we're committing to the broad goals of strengthening Canada's global leadership and recognize that all the participants share these goals. So in all of our conversations, we commit to remembering that we are on the same side and we will seek to find common ground and inspiration. So I'm just going to give a few seconds for all of us to digest this. This is really a space. This is, as is in the name, is a space for all of us. And so before moving on, I just want to do a quick check to say that we are all okay. We are all in agreement about our community agreements. If I could get just a couple of thumbs up to make sure folks are okay, whether through the chat reactions or your videos, that'd be great. Just making sure that everyone is comfortable. Oh, okay. I see a couple of thumbs up. Thank you. So we do have 8 community assumptions. These are statements that we are agreeing to as fact before moving on with our conversations. Our community assumptions are as follows. 1, all systems of oppression exist and are interconnected. 2, opposing systems of oppression, building alternatives, and cultural change are all necessary. 3, dismantling systems of oppression benefits everyone. 4, confronting social injustice can both be painful and or joyful. 6, liberation is possible. 5, liberation is possible. 6, we are all here because we want and choose to be here. 7, we live at intersections. We all benefit and are harmed by systemic oppression, even if in different ways. an individual's community is the expert of their own experience and the solution to the problems they face. The next one is everyone deserves the autonomy of choice. And our final one is the body doesn't lie. So do take time and do what you need to do to be able to participate and be present in this conversation. Once again, just giving a couple of seconds for all of us to digest this, to agree on this. And if I could get a couple of thumbs up before we move on to say that we are all in agreement, that would be great. See a thumbs up from Pat. Okay, great. Thank you all. And now that we've kind of set the ground a little bit for our session, I do want to take some time and ask, okay, who's in the room, who's participating today? I'm going to be asking you folks to please open up either your phones or your other device and go on Mentimeter. If I could get some of my support staff to put the code into the chat as well directly for folks, that would be great. You can scan the QR code here on the page as well. Okay. And so this is just for our first question is just for reporting purposes. What is your gender? And there are a couple of options. 100%. We've never had. Oh, okay. Okay. I think this is fairly similar to what we usually see in our sessions as well. We have about 3 of these questions and then we'll launch in. The Mentimeter will be open throughout the session. You'll see that we do have a space for Q&A at the end of the presentation. And so I've left the questions app open throughout the presentation. So as you go along, as we are talking and engaging, feel free as the questions pop up to ask them. And when we get to that portion, the questions will already be up and we can go through them all as a group. Okay, great. And so for the next question, what size is your organization? So we're just trying to get a sense of the different types of organizations that we have, whether small, medium, large, or some government agencies as well. Okay, so we have medium to large, a lot of medium to large size organizations, some small organizations, and not no government folks. That's great. And then the final question is, what is your role within your organization? So for our conversation today, is it mostly leaders that are joining us? Is it PSEAH focal points? And when we say focal points, we mean staff that is specifically in charge or responsible for safeguarding and PSEAH activities in their organizations. Oftentimes, the 2 big groups that we get are the NGO staff and the PSEAH focal points, which I see is also the case here. Okay, great. Thank you all so much for participating in this activity with me. Like I said, the Menti will be open. So as we go along, if you have any questions, you can put them in there. We will see them. And when we get to the Q&A portion, we will answer them. So before I kind of give the floor to the Safeguarding Resource and Support Hub, RSH, who will be giving us a short presentation, I just wanted to kind of go a little bit over the reason why this session came about. A lot of us know the challenges that come with sometimes trying to get our policies and make them live on the ground. In the work that we do, we not only have to, of course, consider the policies, the procedures, the guidelines that are developed, but also how do we actually implement it? How do we bring it to local communities? How do we integrate it into the places that we work? And how do we make them live? How do we make them useful and used in the communities that we're working with. And with this question in mind, this is how this collaboration came about. The RSH Hub, it's a very interesting hub that, as you will hear, works in many different countries, and they are going to take us through a little bit their experience, the challenges and the opportunities that they have seen in trying to implement and adapt PSEAH policies, procedures, and programs on the ground. And with that, it is my great pleasure to welcome Oji and Emma, and I will stop sharing my screen and allow you to share your screen so that you can take your presentation and introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see it now. All right.
So you can see it.
Emma, are you? I'm here. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, there was a bit of echo, but yeah, I think that's okay.
Thank you so much. Could you, yes, share the slides with that would be great. So first of all, to say thanks so much to Fanta and to everyone at Digna for having us at this important conference. It's really, really great to be here and delighted to share the work of the Resource and Support Hub. My name is Emma Wakaru. I am the team leader and I'm based in London.
There's a little bit of feedback underneath your video, like a buzzing sound.
Is that better?
It's still there.
Is that better now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I've changed my settings. Hopefully that stays. So yeah, I was just saying, thanks so much for having us. My name's Emma Wakawu. I'm the team leader for the Global Resource and Support Hub. And the aim today is really just to give a brief oversight of who we are, and then I'll pass over to Obi for some more of our work. Okay, next slide, please. Fantastic. So some of you may have heard of the Resource and Support Hub, but I wanted to just kind of recap who we are and where we started from. So the Resource and Support Hub is funded by UK Aid and started in December 2019. So we're a project who were set up to support organisations in the humanitarian and development space to strengthen safeguarding policy and practice against sexual exploitation, abuse, and sexual harassment. We are committed to being collaborative, and we do want to work with as many organisations as possible. We're driven by the needs of less resource civil society organisations. So the purpose and why we were set up was because there was a recognition that national organisations are often left behind or don't receive the same amount of support as other organisations when delivering aid. We're guided by survivor-centred principles, and one of our main focuses is on contextualised products and services. We offer a global multilingual online platform where we have a wealth of resources, which I'll go into on the next few slides. But we are also active in 12 countries across 4 different regions. Next slide, please. Great, so we have included this QR code for you to access our Resource and Support Hub, and for you to kind of be able to have a look around and access the services which we provide on there. I'll leave that up for a minute just so that everyone can access that. And our website is safeguardingsupporthub.org, in case that's easier to type in, as you'll see at the top. Okay, next slide, Ogie. Thank you very much. So a recap of our online hub. This was set up in 2019, and we did a mapping across the resources which we were able to find online to support organisations to strengthen their institutions around safeguarding. Since then, we have mapped out the areas where we see evidence gaps, and we have tried as much as possible to share, to develop or share other organisations' resources in this area. We do have a newsletter where we share any new tools and resources, and all of our tools and resources are contextualised to the regions or countries where they are developed. We offer a free and interactive e-learning course, which is an online service consisting of 5 modules. It's targeted for not for safeguarding experts, so perhaps finance managers or HR managers within an organisation. And each of the modules kind of progressively aim to kind of increase knowledge and be able to apply safeguarding in their respective roles. We also offer Ask an Expert service, which is a service provided to national organisations who can get in touch with us and set out a request, whether it's about developing a policy or support with investigations or how to set up referral mechanisms at community level, really anything that the organisation would like to kind of approach us about. We would then assign an expert in the country, and it's a free service which is accessible for civil society. The third offer is that we have a number of peer-to-peer learning exercises. So we offer mentorship, which is a 6-month support programme to CSOs, as well as webinars, podcasts and blogs. And I should say that all of our services are demand-led. So we are very much basing them on what CSOs are looking for and the demand that we are hearing on the ground, as well as through our online hub. And then the last one is that we offer a directory of safeguarding consultants. RSH vet the consultant and have them on our website, very similar to Digna and what they offer. And we offer this in a range of different countries. So what we're really trying to build up is national and regional expertise of safeguarding consultants across a wide range of services. And finally, to mention that our online hub is available in English, French, Swahili, Arabic, Urdu and Bangla now, in a number of additional languages. So the idea is that we're really able to target as many organisations as possible. I wanted to include this slide just to show where we're currently active. So in Africa, we opened up 3 offices, starting with Ethiopia, then Nigeria and South Sudan. And all of these offices offer kind of tailored support to civil society organisations. They run trainings in country. They can direct them to or signpost to our resources. In the Middle East, we are active in Jordan, Yemen and Syria, and actually also more recently Turkey, where we are responding to the earthquake which happened earlier in the year. We also serve the wider Middle East region, given the kind of commonality of language. So a lot of our resources and support actually goes beyond these countries. The next one is South Asia. So earlier this year, we opened up in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and we are working with a number of networks to target the large number of civil society organisations in both of these contexts. And then finally, we're also active in Eastern Europe, in the war against Ukraine, and we are active in Poland, Romania and Moldova, where many of Ukrainians were fleeing to when the war first kicked off. So we have a wide range of settings. We do have kind of an approach to how we set up our national hubs and kind of what our focus is. So the first one is that our target audience, or our primary audience, is always the less resourced civil society organisations in low income and fragile contexts. Less resource is quite a generic term, which looks quite different in the different contexts. So, we do usually map out what that might look like, whether it's by number of members of staff or volunteers. But it can really be any national organisation who approaches us who we will support. The second one is around partnership and collaboration. So we're aware that there's many organisations already working on safeguarding at the national level. The idea is that we want to team up with them and kind of promote their resources as well as any activities which they are running. We often hold webinars, or we would interview people for podcasts who are running such initiatives. So I would really encourage you, if you are operational in any of the countries which I outlined, we'd love to hear from you. We are evidence-based, so when we kind of first set up in country, we do engage with the PSEAH networks who are already existing, but we also run a kind of assessment to look at the landscape of safeguarding in the country, which consists of kind of a survey and different interviews with different stakeholders. So that the idea is we can really work out kind of where RSH can best add value. I've already mentioned that our services are tailored and contextualized, but that really is quite a key aspect for us. We support our teams through what that looks like. We often hear or see global products which are kind of given to teams in country, and we hear them saying, now you need to contextualize it for your context, but often not a lot of support given around maybe what the local laws are, the social norms. So we really support our teams to kind of help them through that process. And sometimes, that might even be by a district or a province within the country itself, given the complexity of some of our national hubs. We also consider translation, so we do translate our materials into a number of languages. We would, of course, do more if budget wasn't an issue, but we have had to be quite selective over which languages we translate into within the country. And then we also talk about blended services. So that's really recognising that training for a CSO is not going to, change their safeguarding policy and practice, but that they might use a training as well as some mentorship, as well as maybe access to webinars, really to build their knowledge and learn more about kind of applying safeguarding. In country, we also have a national expert board where we have 8 to 10 key experts who advise our national offices. We only have about 1 to 2 people per country, so we are quite thin on the ground. So we really welcome kind of the advice and direction from others. And we also work, as I said, with the PSEAH networks, who often would sit on that board as well. And then for each of our national hubs, we have a hub-specific website, which you can access, where you will find all of our kind of resources and services, which I mentioned earlier. Great. Okay, shall I hand over to you for the next slides?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Emma. Hi all, my name is Oge Chukwudozie. I'm the Global Safeguarding Advisor for Resource and Support Hub, and actually currently running a master's program at St. Mary's University, Halifax. So I'm in the Atlantic region of Canada currently. Emma has, talked to us around the approach that we use for our hubs. So now here, a bit of the experience we've actually, gone through while implementing at the hubs. And one of the key ones is that implementing safeguarding, or PSEAH, is not a one-off exercise. And one-off training is never enough. There are instances where INGOs or even, like organizations on their own will conduct a training for their staff and say, oh, yeah, so you've been trained on safeguarding. And then, that way, like they can tick and say, yes, training for safeguarding completed. And that is it, done and dusted. But from our experience, that is never enough. Safeguarding is not a one-off tick box exercise. And then there is need to contextualize safeguarding in the country. And this is not a one-person activity. Emma shared, like how for RSH, one of our key aims is really like to contextualize resources and activities. So, like you have people that would say, oh, the safeguarding lead, this is your responsibility. Take on this and adapt it, like have a policy, adapt the policy. And then, one person is delegated with that and is supposed to just go off and run on it. But we've also seen that that doesn't work. And then for resources, there is needs to contextualize, what does this mean? Like, reflecting at the national laws, the customs, the social norms, what works in that country, like for organizations, even the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats, like the SWOT analysis, like all these are needed to be able to effectively contextualize resources, even safeguarding resources in country. So it is not what one single person will go off and work on and say, yes, this is contextualized. Again, we also found out that collaborative policy development, safeguarding policy development is empowering. Like as part of our mentorship program, mentors, they are consultants, are like paired with organizations to provide a longer period of support, like about 6 months to these organizations. And then, most times they will expect that, oh, these are consultants, so they will just write our policy for us. But we found that that is not the approach that RSH is using. And we found out that, working collaboratively with the staff, at least the key staff of the organization, for them to understand even what the policy is, why is it important to have a policy, and what are the contents of, like a standard policy. How does it like reflect on your situation? What are your specific, situation and issues in your organization in this country? So the consultants usually will like have sessions with them to explain these things, why the policy is important, and then take them through the different contents. And then, the staff, the relevant staff will go write the sections of the policy, bring back to the consultants, who will now review and then, make amends. So and the CSOs now have actually come back to say, this is actually very important for us. This is actually quite, enlightening, because if we give somebody to just write for us, most times that ownership is not there. Even if, like they want to train their staff later on, but that ownership, but by the time we develop it ourselves, we already understand what is in that policy and why it's important and what we need to do to actually implement, because we are the ones that wrote it, we understand. So we've seen that, yes, it's empowering, it's kind of, capacity building, because even from that point of developing the policy, they already understand, the nitty-gritties in it. And then mentorship, like I've just explained a bit of the mentorship, it provides a targeted, direct, and sustainable form of capacity strengthening. Like this mentorship, we have like a 6 months mentorship program. And then, there is this consultant who is paired with an organization to provide, a series of support, starting with an OCA, we call it OCA, Organizational Capacity Assessment, where the organizations, like assess themselves and then identify the gaps and prioritize on where they want to, focus on for the next 6 months. So such capacity building approach actually provides a more direct support, touching the needs of the organizations, rather than just having a one-off training, which might be implemented afterwards or might not be implemented. But with mentorship, there is this kind of a prolonged support to the organization with the mentees, and then which provides more sustainable form of capacity strengthening. Then another thing that we've experienced is that safeguarding implementation requires funds. Most times, like INGOs will oh yeah, going, of course, most of the CSOs that we target actually have very specific funds. So like for a project, and then, like it's project-based funding that they receive, and then no flexible funding. And then no funding, most of the organizations don't have funding for safeguarding implementation. So, but of course, it requires funds to implement safeguarding adequately. Then there's this difference between the INGO expectations and the context reality. It actually takes time. So the INGOs, might be expecting, oh, like the policy, you need to bring out the policy immediately. You need to do your risk assessment. You need to have reporting mechanisms, all these in the space of, but these things to really be able to have something that works in the community takes time. And another experience we've had is actually about when harm happens. INGOs, sometimes some INGOs will take on the case of investigation, for example, or, we even be playing the blame game, pointing fingers, oh, you didn't do this, oh, you didn't do that. So this we've also experienced doesn't build skills. And in fact, like there was, this is really one of the main concerns that CSOs, have reported over the years. We had this roundtable discussion with CSO leaders in Nigeria. And one of the main concerns they brought, we had an FCDO representative. And then, like, we were discussing around reporting, and they say, look, most of why we don't really report when cases happen, when we don't want to bring it up to our funders, our donors, is because we fear that they will blacklist us, and then we'll stop receiving funding. Of course, they also want to continue to be in the business. So they want to now not report and then sweep under the carpet. But we know the harm, in that, where when you continue to sweep under the carpet, one day eventually it will still get exposed. But if the INGOs and the donors and the other donors, come with the lens of learning, most organizations, most INGOs will say, we're a learning organization. So what does it mean to be a learning organization? When harm happens, of course, nobody's happy, but, it's important to really think through this with the organization and say, what were the gaps? What didn't we do well? And then what can we improve? What do we learn from this? Rather than saying, oh, you didn't do this, oh, you didn't do this, oh, coming from that learning approach is, one of the ways to go, rather than, pointing fingers. So that's also something we experienced while implementing at the hubs. Then now this is just like a chart, where we have due diligence and we have context and culture. Most situations, organizations, have experienced this across all our hubs, both MENA, Africa, across most of the hubs where we implement, where safeguarding and other, capacity building approaches is more of like due diligence. We need to have this in place. Yes, we need to have this, and not necessarily about contextualization, about ownership. And then what happens is that most of the CSOs, tend to now have what I call a knee-jerk reaction to capacity assessment. So once there is any form of capacity assessment, they want to rank themselves high, so that they continue to remain in business. They don't want to get kicked out of the business. If they rate themselves as they are, maybe they will not receive funding. And, for our mentorship program, we also see that, even though we are not even giving funds, but, organizations, because that's what they are used to. So they will just rank themselves so well. And then, but we've already discussed with the mentors, and you say, look, this, because we know this is going to happen. So it's important that they get to understand that this is actually a capacity strengthening approach. It's a capacity strengthening mentorship. We are not giving you funds. So if you say you are good in everything, then that means you don't need this mentorship program. You don't need to participate because you're already good. So you will not see, they will, after ranking, they will not go back again and say, oh, okay, yes, we are not really so good at this. We are not really so good at this. So that is very important for INGOs to note that safeguarding really shouldn't be approached as a due diligence, but rather more of a capacity building approach where organizations, are collaboratively trying to support, each other for the benefit of the people we serve. So due diligence, where it's like tick box, having international standards, systems, policies. Do you have safeguarding policy? Yes. Do you have complaints mechanism? Yes. Is it in line with international standards and local laws? Well, yes. Without really not thinking around the context, the ownership, the understanding. So that is something that we've also identified that would help, that is currently happening. But when we change, then a bit things will improve. Some challenges in terms of implementation at a country level. Said it, contextualization can be time and resource intensive. It really is time and resource intensive. To really routinely and systematically go through, these things for the reporting mechanisms, for the policy, policy development. You can imagine the time it will take to, take the organization through what safeguarding policy is and why it's important, the contents, and then they go right, knowing that they are not professionals in this, and then reviewing and coming back. You can imagine the time it will take, reporting mechanisms, making sure that, yes, they engaged community, and also really contextualization can be time and resource intensive. That's the challenge. And then focusing on due diligence rather than capacity strengthening, is also a challenge, like I've identified earlier on. So that should be that balance. Safeguarding risk mitigation measures are not properly planned for and funded. Like we say, yes, so safe programming, safeguarding, you actually should come from a risk approach. Yes. We promote that, so organizations are encouraged to conduct a thorough risk assessment. And then, you see organizations taking time, which it also takes time, like to do a comprehensive organizational risk assessment. So they take through, sit down, do these risk assessments, identify mitigation measures across, various categories. And at the end of the day, it's not reflected in any work plan. It's not reflected in any budgets. So it's not planned for, it's not budgeted for. Then how will it be implemented? So that again is a challenge. So it's important that the risk assessments are actually, planned for adequately. Let it be part of at least some of the mitigation measures, even if not all, some of, be part of the work plan. And that's where we say, funding safeguarding. Let it be part of the work plan. Let it be part of the, budget. Unrealistic expectations, timelines and conditions from INGO funding partners. And then, making CSOs abide by INGO policy without plans to support understanding adaptation. Most times, you see INGOs, have memorandum of understanding for their implementing partners or downstream partners, whatever they call it. And, as part of that as part of that MOU, the INGO safeguarding policy is attached, and so you can develop your policy, or you have to abide by our own, that's what's there. But this is presented to the organization, and then this organization doesn't even, understand really what this means, and of course, from experience, most times organizations will just want to sign on because yes, funds is coming, and you want to just sign on without really even understanding. So they sign on to this and they agree that they will abide by the safeguarding policy without really even understanding what does it mean to abide by the safeguarding policy. What should they have in place? What does that really even translate to? So when INGOs, do this, it's, that's a challenge when there is no plan to support understanding and adaptation. And, that's contextualization we are talking about. So there was this research, it's actually very recent, this year, that our MENA region conducted. It's titled, the state of safeguarding across the MENA region. And actually, like several countries were part of that research, even outside the Jordan, Yemen, and Syria that we are currently working on, included Lebanon and Palestine as well. And, it was I hope our tech team will be able to share that research is actually available on our online hub. So that research identified some challenges and barriers to safeguarding in the MENA region, which it also applies to other areas as well, and then some enablers. So yeah, part of the challenges are limited funding, it keeps occurring, limited funding, irregular funding pattern to implement safeguarding. So like for funding, it's limited or it's irregular. This is coming more from the CSOs. For INGOs, they have better funding for safeguarding, and they are better able to implement safeguarding as compared to the CSOs. And then another challenge that was identified, part of that research, because we even had like both qualitative and quantitative online survey and FGD focus group discussions. We have limited availability of technical tools in Arabic. This, is a major factor because when talking about contextualization, language is a major part of contextualization, even though, of course, there are other aspects to consider. It's not only language, but language is a major part. And when, the language, so the concern there is that most of the technical resources are not in Arabic. And even when, for those that are translated, it's the context is not the same, so that came out as a challenge in that research that we did. So limited availability of technical tools in Arabic. This, of course, we also apply to other areas, other countries, other regions where the local languages are not included. Or there are no resources in the local language. Yeah, and then challenge of leadership. So without leadership support, safeguarding becomes tokenistic. So if it's only the safeguarding focal person that is running around, is doing everything, and then the leader is not, supportive in any way, it's not, providing that oversight, and because ultimately that responsibility should be on the leader. So, but when it doesn't happen, then of course there is little or nothing the safeguarding focal person can do. And then for the region, fragility of legal systems, came as one of the challenges that they identified. And then capacity gaps in terms of investigators. In fact, this actually even cuts across both for INGOs and CSOs. For INGOs, it's like, okay, there are no investigators in the region, and most times they had to rely on the INGO's HQ office to send, to bring investigators. So that capacity is not in the region. So, and then you have, situations where the investigator will have to fly from wherever country to come in, and then of course they don't understand the context and the structure of where they are. And then for us, even in RSH, we've also have identified this more widely, where there is really like gap in terms of investigators. Yeah, we have our safeguarding directory, but like there are limited number of consultants who have experience in investigation, from that our directory. So it's really a major gap that we've identified across all the hubs. And then another challenge is gender and social norms exacerbate power imbalance. Of course, this is not surprising to see that gender and social norms, actually fuel power imbalance, because that's what it is. So some of the enablers are, for the enablers, it was categorized into the internal enablers that support safeguarding, and then the external enablers. So for internal, leadership commitment now, becomes an enabler of safeguarding. So once leadership is involved, and then so where you see the leader modeling positive behavior, the leader being really committed and having that learning, mindset, not just, really walking the talk, having that learning mindset to improve systems. So that is a major enabler, because in fact, we keep saying it, that safeguarding can't happen without leadership support. And then having dedicated safeguarding leads. So that research showed that organizations that had dedicated safeguarding leads, not even like focal points, but having dedicated safeguarding leads, would really do better in terms of implementation. And then of course, the safeguarding, because sometimes we have focal persons who have their primary role, but now double. Yeah. So for small organizations, good, but for big organizations, then safeguarding usually suffers, because this person is torn between so many responsibilities. So but having dedicated safeguarding leads helps, and of course, this person now also has the capacity to actually, push things in the organization. Then for external, one of the enablers for external is a safe and enabling environment for reports to be made. Yeah, of course, reports, when reports don't happen, it doesn't mean that things are going okay. Sometimes organizations will have, of course, set up complaints mechanism, nicely set up there. Yes, we have our complaint boxes, we have the hotline, we have all these things, but no, we're not receiving reports. So yeah, we are good. Sometimes it doesn't really work that way. But where the organization, has this, promotes this safety. So even the staff, everybody, staff, volunteers, understand their role in that reporting frame, because anybody, can receive reports. The complainants, might want to meet this volunteer who, they like their personality, or they feel more comfortable talking to, or can meet someone else to report a case. So once a report is made, then whoever that received this report, should know what to do. So should be empowered already to know the action to take, and then how to scale it up within the organization, and rather than keeping it quiet. And then of course, I always say that if a staff or a volunteer doesn't feel that their own voice counts in that organization, then how will they even really be able to maybe see a case or hear a report and be able to bring it back to the organization to make a report. So it's important to have that safe and enabling environment. And then again, it was identified that partnerships and collaborations also are key, because you agree with me that safeguarding is an evolving theme, and there are different things we are still learning along the way. So when organizations come together, share learning either through like the PSEAH network or other national networks that are available to discuss this, to discuss concerns that they receive, and then map out ways to improve, then that also is a capacity building approach on its own that will continue to empower people. Getting to my last set of slides, talking about lessons learned now, that's more of recommendations. Strengthening safeguarding risk assessment and management, is essential. So we have to strengthen safeguarding risk assessment and management, because that is basically where everything starts from. What are the risks? What are the possible risks? What are the mitigation measures you are putting in place? So this is key starting point for our safeguarding work. It's challenging in short-term programs, like in humanitarian settings, and then some programs are inherently more risky and need to be designed and funded in ways that are more flexible. And then another one is embedding safeguarding across the organization, where, it's important. Safeguarding cuts across. I've never seen a thing that cuts across in organization like safeguarding, from programs to HR to communications to fundraising. So good safeguarding prevention, reporting and response needs coordination and input from across the organization. And of course, it's relevant to the HR, human resources and recruitment, programs, communication, fundraising, etc. So it's important for everyone in the organization to know their role. So each job description really should have, the role, at least the minimum requirements of safeguarding, even if it's just for them to understand their role and what the organization stand on safeguarding is, and then for them to report a case, and of course maintain help to maintain the positive space. The other lessons learned include improve community reporting. This is essential. Like you can't set up, there's a saying in my place that you cannot, shave someone's head in their absence. So you cannot set up, complaint mechanisms without the people, so it's important that, communities are involved. And then, communities, you're looking at men, women, yes. You're looking at children, boys and girls. You're also looking at, persons with disabilities, other diverse, other minorities. Ask, who are we not hearing from? Who have we not heard from? So mechanisms may be in place, but might not always work. So it's important to bring in communities. Recognize that community reporting requires consultation and time to build trust, and create reporting mechanisms that will be used, and make use of existing community reporting mechanisms. So if there are already community reporting mechanisms that community is using, then please, by all means, you can utilize that. And then, of course, it doesn't end in saying, oh, we have our hotlines, we have our complaint boxes, we are not receiving anything, so everything is okay. No, like once in a while, the organization can conduct focus group discussion, ask questions, even as a part of the normal program, routine check that is being done, so yeah, you can, bring in questions, ask questions around, how safe, and then if there is anything, of a concern that they want to bring out. Strengthening survivor-centered approach. Yesterday, there was a session dedicated on survivor-centered approach in this conference. So it's important to also to really approach that from a survivor-centered approach. And then lastly, I have here, hold CSO leadership, donors, and staff to account. So when we say safeguarding is everyone's responsibility, it is indeed everyone's responsibility. And then when harm occurs, it's important that, all hands are on deck to really learn from this and identify ways to continue to improve. All right, so that's what I have. Now this is my last slide. I might have already taken you through our website, so please you can always visit our website. There are loads and loads of resources there as well for you, and then please sign on to our newsletter so that you can receive latest news and events, and then you can follow us on social media at Safeguarding RSH. We are on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, so please follow us on these channels. And thank you so much, while I pass on now to Fanta.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you for the detailed presentation and all of the lessons learned. I'm sure we'll get some interactions as we go. So this next part of our session is really about engaging with you, the folks who are on this call with us. We have some questions for you that we developed collaboratively between OJ, Emma, and I, and then we also have space for you to ask questions or give your reflections on anything that you heard, or some of your experiences that you've had, the challenges and maybe opportunities that you've seen as well in your own work. So I will invite you once again to go back to your Mentimeter for our very first question to you. Oh, we already have 2 responses. So the very first question is, from your experience, what are the challenges in implementing safeguarding across different contexts? So we just heard from OJ about some of the things that they have seen, but in your own organizations, what things have you seen? So we have staff and community understanding of what safeguarding means. We have confidentiality and investigation procedures. I know investigations are really hard in certain contexts. We have supported leadership. Yes, exactly. As I mentioned in our opening session yesterday, we really need leaders to kind of take the helm on at PSEAH. Without them, any effort will fail. It's very important that they are part of the process so that they can bring on the rest of the staff. We have budgets, which I know I don't need to explain. We've all experienced. We have contextualizing policies, procedures, and practices. Lack of investigators in many contexts, that's extremely true, both in terms of qualifications, but also sometimes language, sometimes cultural understanding, definitely. Budgeting and maintaining the conversation. Yes, no one is responsible for this, simply added to an already worked team. This is something I've heard a lot. Sometimes they pick one person that's either the safeguarding focal point, or sometimes the HR person, and that person has to develop this entire policy and make it live all by themselves, which is quite difficult. So we are getting much more. We do have more questions for you, and just to let you know that we will take some of these responses after, not some, all of the responses after the conference, and it will be shared with you. So I won't go through all of them, but as you can see, we've all experienced different challenges in really implementing our work on the ground. So the next question then says, what key factors, in your opinion, should be considered when contextualizing and implementing safeguarding? So what are the priority things that we should all be keeping in mind as we, not only design these policies, but bring them to our national offices, and then in how we work with our partners, in how we work with the communities that we're trying to support, and our own staff as well. Flexibility. Very true. We have local cultural norms. Yes, as OJ mentioned before, of course, there's the need to really contextualize not only the cultural norms, but the legal sort of availabilities that are there as well. Practicality. I like that. I think that's a very real issue, and it's hard to define because obviously practicality looks different in each context, but how practical are our initiatives? How real, like how realistic is it, this plan that we've laid out, given the context that we're working in? An honest review of power dynamics within organizations. I think this is very, very good. We often talk about power dynamics in terms of the people that we're working with, the partners that are supporting us, but even within our own organizations, understanding local context, local risks. It is not a one-time activity, but an ongoing process. Definitely. And then start with learning what may already be in place and assess effectiveness of existing systems. It's great. So for the last question we have for you, currently, are your policies and resources available to your staff and volunteers in a variety of languages and cultural contexts? Is this something that your organization already practices? Is it something that you'll see there's none at all, there's some, all, and I don't know, if you're not sure that it's adapted. Yeah. And really, I think I wanted to bring along this question to kind of show to all of us that this is something that I think a large member of the sector is working on. We are not there yet. As you can see, we have 36% where none of the policies and resources are available in a variety of cultural contexts and languages. And then we have the highest percentage being some, and then we do have a fairly high number that says all. So I think it's a nice balance, and it's really good to know where you stand. I think the first step in being able to kind of bridge this gap, as we're talking about in our session, is understanding where you stand in terms of your policies and your measures. All right. Okay. So now it's open floor. We do have this time for the next 15 or so minutes for your reflections, for any questions that you may have, either to myself or to the RSH folks that presented to us today. Is there anything that you would like to respond to? All of your inputs are welcome. And if you would like to speak, just use the raise hand function and we can unmute you. Or you can directly put your inputs as well through Mentimeter. I think we've talked about a lot in terms of, oh, there, we have one person. Okay, I see Zainab raised your hand. Zainab, I'll give you about 2 to 3 minutes so we can get to everyone, and then please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah. Just like you said, the question and reflection, especially this one for the in international. The question reflection I meant, I'm looking for is, since they are having different countries covered, are they able to get all exactly what they want? Is they working with the governments, the stakeholders, the vulnerable, and the community? Lesson learned, reflection, where I work with in Sierra Leone, I only work with one country, which I don't even cover. There is a lot like what Uje just presents. We are close with Sierra Leone and Nigeria. There is a lot of conflict, corruption is in. That I really stick on in my country. In Canada, one, they don't recognize Canadian money. And all the international organization we are having in Sierra Leone, they have more than 150. Nothing reflects to the vulnerable people. That's the problem of Africa, the corruption. And China and Russia came in. So if we are trying to bring on to the anti-racism, these things we need to to address, especially the non-for-profit organizations. So let me stop there.
Thank you for your reflection. And I believe your question, you also put it in the chat, is to you, OJ. Zainab is asking, in your work with safeguarding, how do you work with the country's the country's government, the local government, and the different stakeholders to put in front the vulnerable people in the communities as well?
Yeah, thank you, Zainab, for that. Yeah, for our research, actually, like when Emma was presenting, you hear our main focus actually are the national CSOs in the country. And yes, we are working in, like all these countries, but I will tell you that we are not covering like all, we are not able, it's not possible to cover like all the CSOs in, in each of the countries that we are working. So, but of course, we have like different types of services. We have the mentorship, which is more targeted, and then we have loads of resources that anybody can, access. But now coming specifically about governments, yes, even though our focus is not the government, but we've had cause to engage with government in some of our hubs. Again, we know some of the challenges there is in terms of working with government. Sometimes there's no, so there are like for Nigeria, and some other countries, the issue of continuity, you might be engaging with this person, and then at the end of the day, this person is posted to another place, and then you have to work with another person. And of course, bureaucracy again becomes is also another major challenge when it's when working with governments. However, even with these challenges, we've had the opportunity to work with some targeted government agencies focusing on something. So like in Nigeria, there is this program that is called the At-Risk Children Project. It's actually from the presidency. So it's like a social intervention program targeted to help at-risk children and vulnerable youths to build capacity and then to expose them. So the project is a social intervention program designed to train the youths on different skills. So as part of that, our research was actually called in to help set safeguarding systems. So first, to train the youths who are going to be, now cascading support to the younger children. So you can imagine the level of risk that entails, that you have these youths who will now be engaging much younger children, at least about 10 years and above, but the youths are about 20. So you can imagine that because the focus is also on children who are out of school. So RSH had to come in to first support them in developing a national safeguarding policy. Similar collaborative process like I described earlier was part of this. So, but this is actually for the program. It's not a safeguarding policy for the nation, for the Nigeria, no, but rather for this program. However, this received a high-level recognition where the Vice President of Nigeria, as at then, actually wrote the foreword on for the policy. So at least that's a way of raising awareness about safeguarding. And we've also identified, even though there are challenges with engaging governments, but if you want to do something on scale, you have to really engage governments, because they are the only ones that have that capacity to actually bring something in a wider scale. So that's really the experience of working with, one of the experiences that of working with governments and how targeted that is. And then for Emma mentioned about our national expert board. usually, across all the countries, we have a representative from the government. So be it the Ministry of Women and Gender or other relevant, ministries that is represented in that board, so that, they also are aware of what RSH is doing in the country and can also help in terms of contextualizing and identifying areas that the hub should go. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've received a couple of questions as you were answering Zainab's question. The very first one is, what are some strategies to encourage leadership in INGOs to prioritize safeguarding?
Yeah, this is crucial. And I always, even ask, especially for our local CSOs, I said, no, why wouldn't you make safeguarding? Why wouldn't you prioritize safeguarding? Like, imagine, like, most of the organizations, maybe their executive director is actually the one that founded this. And I say, like, imagine where after all this that you are doing, but just because you don't have the systems in place, and then someone who has another ulterior motive comes in and makes a mess of all this hard work. You are really committed, you have set this organization up because of the passion you have, and then everything goes down. So the same thing really for leadership. It's important that to understand that safeguarding actually helps to have a quality programming. So I think, if it's presented that way, it's a way of encouraging leaders, to understand the benefits. What are we talking about safeguarding? You want to make sure that you don't bring in the wrong people into the organization, so that, that's safe recruitment. You want to make sure that your programs are implemented in a way that you are not exacerbating risk. That is safe programming. You want to make sure that, your communication, like your media activities, you are not, exposing people. So safeguarding ultimately helps you in developing and implementing quality programming. Do no harm actually continues to be the watchword. Do no harm. So, why would you not want to have a program and an organization that is safe? And then, of course, ultimately, it's about having that safe organization where people are motivated, people are free, and then can report. And when people are motivated, what do? They're able to also put in their best in the work. So why would you not want really to prioritize safeguarding? So it's something that leaders should take quite seriously, and then to continue to push and have that momentum, so that even funders, because donors might not want, it's not all donors that really want to fund safeguarding. So it's important that leaders come together to continue to advocate and push for this cause, because it's ultimately for the good of for the best interest really of the communities that we serve, the organizations, and ultimately to achieve our goals. So that's what I would say for that.
Yeah, very good point. And I think just to add my own 2 cents to that as well, I would say bring leaders into these spaces. So we are talking about the importance of the work that we're doing. We're talking about the challenges, we're talking about the risks. And I think oftentimes there are not too many leaders who are participating in these spaces to truly get to hear firsthand what the work is about, what's important, and how it's going. And so that would be my two cents to the matter. Get them involved, so that it's not just a matter of you trying to convince them that there are challenges, or trying to convince them that it's important to do this work. They can see for themselves. Okay, so we do have another question that says, do you have any recommendations on maintaining the conversation going with our local partners and colleagues on safeguarding and PSEAH?
Yeah, so for maintaining the conversation is just probably what I will suggest will be having a mentorship program, for example, where this INGO will identify either a consultant or if there is a staff that has that adequate skills to really like journey with this organization consistently for a period of 6 months to even a year, you know, depending on the time commitment. And then seeing that journey will actually, you know, have a way of making the partners you know, to relax, because again we know that, you know, these conversations actually take time. You build trust, you build rapport, so but when they know that yes, this person is committed, you know, because again it's about how the concern you have, when it's not about just, oh okay, you have to do this because you know, you just have to do it, and then because of the due diligence, we haven't ticked the box that, you know, we are to do. But that genuine concern that yes, it's really to support you to build your capacity. So that way, you know, the conversation can continue to be ongoing, you know, through a mentorship program will be a good way. And then of course, you know, different activities and different training programs can also be brought in, not just one off, but, you know, consistently and continually. Have fund them for different activities, fund their risk mitigation plan, you know, so that these activities are there, and then you support them all through the activities to ensure that this is well understood.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question before our session comes to a close. This is a very interesting one. Are there any efforts that you are aware of to work collectively on addressing the problem of the lack of investigators/investigation capacity?
Maybe I'll call on Emma, my colleague, to answer this. I know we are doing something with CHS, but please, Emma, do you want to answer this?
Thanks, Oge. Yes, so each of our national hubs come up with kind of themes or a strategy as to, you know, where they want to focus their safeguarding efforts. And I can really say that investigations comes up in every single national hub. So we know that it is a collective global programme, both around the supply of qualified investigators, as well as kind of the content for training for people to become investigators. And RSH has really been thinking around kind of what might our value add be. So there's a few areas that we're going to be focusing on over the next few months. The first one is that I did flag that we offer a database of trained or vetted consultants. And so we really want to narrow that down to kind of look at qualified investigators and be able to promote kind of regional and national investigators. We are also working with CHS Alliance, who offer a scheme called IQTS, which is one of the most well known. It is of very high quality, and we have done a mapping as to what's out there. We have, you know, engaged organisations to understand what training is provided. But I think really the main one, which a lot of people know, is the IQTS scheme. That will be opening up again soon, and we'll be prioritising regional and national trainings for people who want to become investigators. The other thing just to mention on investigations, which I think is maybe worth flagging, is that when cases do come in, a lot of organisations, and I really speak on behalf of civil society organisations, they often expect that it goes straight to an investigator, but actually there's a bit of a process of the case kind of being managed as it comes in. So RSH does provide resources on what we call case management, which may be part of an investigation, but maybe before an investigation or an investigator would get involved. So just to be aware of the different processes as well. A lot of the time cases don't go to investigation for one reason or another. It might be HR disciplinary procedures is the route that goes down, or it might be decided, you know, after an initial call with someone reporting that actually an investigation isn't necessary. So I think, you know, when we think of cases, incoming cases, we think of investigation always result in an investigation. And so, as I say, you know, please do have a look at any of our resources to understand kind of the process of what that might look like. But yeah, I would just say we do see this demand across all of our national hubs. So I was kind of laughing as it came up again. I'd love for RSH kind of to take a step forward on this. You know, we do advocate to donors and embassies within our national hubs and within kind of the UK where I'm based, that this does need funding, and to have people who are qualified to a high level. You know, there are different steps, there's different levels, but it's also about continuous professional development. So people really need to start getting experience in doing investigations. So it definitely is another area in safeguarding which is quite underfunded. I wish I could say a lot more on this, and really, you know, it was similar to the question on governments. We'd love to do more. We obviously are a programme, we have a restricted budget, and we do keep our resources for providing free advice for civil society organisations. You know, we have done some work with governments, but obviously you can get lost in a bit of a black hole when working with governments in countries who are receiving aid. So we do want to make sure that our resources are directed directly to civil society organisations. But as Ogie mentioned, we've found really good avenues in some of our national hubs to engage governments quite effectively. So yeah, it just comes down to kind of where you divert the limited resources that we all have. But thanks so much for the question.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we do not have time for the rest of the questions. I will maybe make note of them. And if it's okay with Emma and Ogie, share a few that I think are really interesting. But otherwise, I want to thank the both of you for your presentation, for all of the information that you shared, and also for giving up your time to kind of share and allow us to learn from your experiences and the challenges that you saw, and sort of the ways that you took to mitigate those challenges. Just before we do sign off, I want to just give a quick reminder about the conference agenda. So we do have lunch from now until 1:30, and then we're back for a sneak peek on the results from the ARC report. So it's going to be about the progress on anti-racism in the international corporation sector in Canada. There'll be a short break, and then we will come back for our closing session, which will be quite interactive. So I invite all of you to come back for that as well. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you to Ogie, thank you to Emma, and thank you to our interpreters as well. Thank you to the team, of course, that's supporting, and thank you to Global Affairs Canada that funds the Digna program. With that, I hope you all have a great lunch. Take some time to stretch your legs, eat a little bit of food, and I hope to see you all back with us for our session at 1:30. Thank you.